do you think that Reform is a racist and sexist party because of the dossier that was released by Labour last week and their advertising?
But I think they do have a problem.
Well, why is it one rule? Why is it one rule for Reform and one rule for...
No, but I didn't say the Green Party was anti-Semitic. I said you've got a problem with anti-Semitism. It's a different thing, isn't it?
I don't think there's a problem with anti-Semitism.
Yeah, okay.
I think that a small proportion...
What is going on, everybody? Oscar here. This interview quickly turned into a clash over credibility, anti-Semitism allegations, media narratives, and Green Party policies. Julia Hartley-Brewer came armed with accusations against Zack Polanski and questions about whether the Greens have a deeper problem within the party. But Ashok Kumar wasn't just defending the Greens. He kept pushing back against what he saw as selective scrutiny and double standards, particularly around coverage of the Golders Green stabbing and criticism of Israel. The bigger issue here is whether the Greens are being fairly examined as a growing political force, or whether they're facing a level of scrutiny that isn't applied equally across the political spectrum. And when the conversation shifts to green economic policies, it becomes a debate about whether Britain's current economic model is failing ordinary people, or whether the Green Party's solutions are simply unrealistic. If you enjoy political analysis and commentary, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's get into it.
Has Zack Polanski's Green Party bubble burst over not just anti-Semitism, but also, crucially, and I'd like you to address this first, the fact that he's a liar?
Why do you say he's a liar?
Well, because he lied about being a member of the National Council of Hypnotherapy when he wasn't to his clients. He also lied when he claimed repeatedly that he was a spokesman for the British Red Cross, something they have been the ones to speak out and go, no, you weren't. He's now apologised for doing that and said that was not true. I mean, basically, he keeps claiming that he's doing things or has jobs which he hasn't actually had. That makes him a liar, doesn't it?
I mean, look, I think this is sort of the end of, election cycle, GOTV forms of attacks that I think, yeah, of course, my understanding is that he was, he'd organized a series of events and he had spoken at them and fundraisers for the Red Cross.
Doesn't mean he's a spokesman.
Of course not, yeah. And
but
so,
he said he lied.
Yeah, he said he was,
and he's not.
And that was the wrong term to describe what he was.
No, was it the wrong term? If Nigel Farage did that, you'd say he was a liar. If Nigel Farage did that, I would also call him a liar.
I mean, if Nigel Farage said that, I would say it's not a big story. That's probably what I would say.
I don't think that is what you'd say. Is the media attacking?
I'm pretty balanced on this.
Is the media attacking Zack Polanski for exposing him for things like telling a woman that he could make her breasts bigger through hypnotherapy, claiming to have had jobs that he didn't have, claiming to be a member of an organisation that he's not a member of? Is that an unfair political attack?
No, I think they're fair. I think they're fair to scrutinize people's record. Absolutely. Do I think they're big stories? No. I get the point about, okay, is this a pattern of behavior? I think in the long history of one's record, if they've said certain things that turns out to be, not wildly untrue, but, a bit untrue. Untrue. Yeah, let's say it. Untrue. I don't think that's an indication of them as a person or
same as the concerns people have about the cabinet minister who didn't know whether they were a solicitor or not. I'm pretty sure I would know if I was a solicitor or not. The chancellor who didn't know how long she worked at the Bank of England or indeed what job she did at Halifax Bank of Scotland. I mean, we're entitled to judge people if they say things that are blatantly, provably untrue.
Of course, I don't think it's a big story, but that's obviously because I think the real stories are, I wish Labour maybe it's the journalists as well, but I wish we could talk more about issues. But I don't think
let's do that. Let's talk about issues. Because one thing I think we can all agree is a big story is the fact that we are seeing a massive increase in physical and verbal attacks on Jews in this country. The stabbing of 2 Jewish men by an alleged suspect currently who's already been charged, believed to be an Islamist attack, has caused great concern. We've big summits in Downing Street, and we're going to be fast-tracking hate crime prosecutions and the like. Now, there's no doubt at all there is a problem of anti-Semitism within the Green Party, because the Green Party itself is investigating no less than 30 candidates who have been publicly identified as having made, posted or said or written blatantly anti-Semitic things, calling Jews vermin, rats, celebrating the October 7th massacre, suggesting that Hamas are, resistance fighters. I mean, you are a Green Party activist. Let's talk about the issues. Is it an issue if you support a party and a party has as much support as the Green Party has garnered in recent months, which is basically siding with Islamist extremists and anti-Semites, and is putting up candidates in local elections who are blatantly, outrageously, disgustingly racist against Jews?
Okay, so firstly, we have over 4,500 candidates. We've gone from a party 6 months ago that was 60,000 to now having 230,000. And so, yeah, of course, needs to be a more thorough vetting process. But it's not that those 30 candidates are being investigated for anti-Semitism. They're being investigated for a series of comments, some of them racist, some of them sexist, or the accusations of that. They haven't been found guilty of that. And a large proportion of them are guilty of being critical of the state of Israel. Some of them, of course, are anti-Semitic, but a lot of them aren't. I think.
But no one's being investigated for being critical of Israel.
That's not true. That's not true. The list was released by a Labor dossier this morning. I'm sure you've seen it, and they are, for example, retweeting the Bob Dylan lyrics about death to the IDF. I'm sorry, Julia, but that's not a crime. We're allowed to criticize and even call for the death of a foreign army. If I said death to the IRGC, should that be criminalized? If I said death to the Russian army, should that be criminalized? Should I be deselected as a Labor candidate or a Reform candidate?
The vast majority of these candidates are being investigated for, I wouldn't even say alleged. They have written on their public posts in social media or stated at public rallies on video. They have, including, by the way, the deputy leader, Mohsen Ali, who's, by the way, suggesting a lot of these people should be taking legal action. Some of the things that he has said and he has posted are highly questionable as well. Why do you support a party which has such a problem with anti-Semitism?
Look, as I've already said,
you think it doesn't?
There's a lot of conflation here. A lot of them don't. Some of them do. So I don't think that those 30 candidates out of 4,500 is an indication. This is, I think also last week, for example, Labor put out this advertisement that said, that was Ofcom pulled down, that said, had a person read out all these tweets that by different Reform candidates that were racist or sexist or whatever. I don't think that's an indication necessarily of what Reform believes. I think this sort of cherry picking, and I don't think, do you think that therefore that makes Reform a racist and sexist organization? Surely not. I think we should treat this in the same way. I think there are parties that have platforms, and those platforms are the policies upon which we run on. Individuals who may have tweeted things years ago out of a massive list of candidates, I think that is not an accurate representation of the party. And I think I would say the same thing for Labor. I'd say the same thing for Reform.
I think when it continues to happen again and again and again, and you're saying it's a vetting problem, you could argue, why do those people think that the Green Party is the home for them?
Do you think that Reform is a racist and sexist party because of the dossier that was released by Labor last week and their advertising?
But I think they do have a problem.
Why is it one rule? Why is it one rule for Reform and one rule for... No,
but I didn't say the Green Party was anti-Semitic. I said you've got a problem with anti-Semitism. It's a different thing, isn't it?
I don't think there's a problem with anti-Semitism. I think that a small proportion of candidates who've said things in the past, they're being now investigated.
There are questions about
4,500 candidates is an indication.
There are questions about the likes on posts and the retweeting of posts from not only Zack Polanski but also both deputy leaders as well. That would suggest there is an issue.
Tell me specifically.
There are so many pieces of paper in front of me.
There's so many.
I'll message you afterwards. But you will have seen them.
I want to know. Please inform your viewers. I haven't seen them. I'd like to know which leaders have
plenty of them. I'm desperately trying to find them right now. Well, I will.
I'm literally in the edge of my seat, Julia, waiting for you to give us this vital breaking news. The anti-Semites are running the party.
I'm held back by the fact I can't actually leave through things with plaster on my fingers, but there we are.
Oh no.
Well, these are issues. Green Party leader shared a conspiracy theory. Rachel Millward, co-deputy leader, shared a conspiracy theory about the Golders Green attack in which 2 men were stabbed. Shared a post which claimed a third victim of the day was Muslim, had been erased to suit a weaponised, desperate narrative. I mean, that's just one example. Mohsen Ali is.
Wait, but how is that an example? You just read out, for example, earlier that there were 2 victims of that attack. In fact, there was 3 victims. The first victim was Muslim. Why is it an anti-Semitic or conspiratorial why haven't we mentioned that? The Prime Minister didn't mention that. The media hasn't mentioned that. There was the first victim was Muslim. Do Muslim lives not matter?
He wasn't hospitalised. I think the attack was aimed at Jews, is the viewpoint, pretty much. No. Anybody involved.
But why not even mention that a Muslim was attacked first? And he was hospitalized, actually. But, his name's Ismail Hussein. He was hospitalized. And we should name that his life matters, too. That's not anti-Semitic. That's not anti-Jewish hatred to simply mention the other person that was also stabbed.
Well, no, I think it's not the mention of it. It's the idea that the reason it's not mentioned is because of the conspiracy. Let's talk about.
Julie, let me just ask you. Do you think that people should that you should have mentioned that earlier in your program?
Talked about 2 on the day when I was on air on the Thursday after that event had happened and I went to Golders Green. There was only talk of 2 victims at the time.
But do you think it's a problem that we don't mention
that we don't mention 2 victims at the time? If you want to take that up the Metropolitan Police, that's an issue, isn't it?
But then you've just given the story and you've only mentioned 2 of the victims. I think it.
Yeah.
3 were stabbed.
Okay, but the Met Police
you mention that?
and the Prime Minister.
You mention that?
The Met Police,
the Met
Police and the Prime Minister keep talking about 2 Jewish men being stabbed.
Yeah, but you're a journalist. You're a leading journalist. You're a leading journalist in this country.
They want the people being targeted. Who was being targeted?
A
Who
Muslim
do you believe
and
was
2
being
Jewish
targeted?
people. A Muslim and 2 Jewish people.
And you think the Muslim was targeted because he was Muslim?
Well, I don't know, but I don't think we should not mention that. I don't know the full story.
You've mentioned him, but there we are. Can I talk to you about? I've got very little time.
Maybe I'm guilty of conspiracy theories because I mentioned it.
Well, you think there's a conspiracy theory behind? I don't think there is, and I think suggesting there's
there's no conspiracy.
Okay, can I mention other? Can I talk about some other policies for the love of God, please, Ashok? Please. We've got very little time. I mean, other policies. One of the things I'm asking our audience is about: has the bubble burst? Not just because Zack Polanski is actually facing some daylight. He's no longer being treated like he's a sort of Labrador who's just come in from a long walk and is cuddling up and want to tell us about his policies. The anti-Semitism allegations, the problems on that are being looked at, but also some of the more radical policies. Lots of people might love the idea of a wealth tax on 1% on assets above 10 million, but people also understand that in countries that have done these things, you see the wealthy leave and you don't end up making any more money. Net zero carbon electricity by 2030, 70% from wind. That means we're going to be sitting in the dark. A £15 an hour minimum wage for all ages means no one's going to be hiring a 16 or 17-year-old at all, and lots of businesses will simply go under because they can't afford even the current minimum wage and national insurance increase. Legalising heroin, decriminalising drug possession, legalising prostitution, open border policy and giving people a house if they come here, and no deportations. A 4-day working week with a 5-day pay power. No, none of this is remotely workable or affordable. Isn't it the case that a lot of people, they want to vote against the existing parties? They feel let down, understandably, by the Tories and by Labour. But actually, the Greens haven't actually had to deliver on a workable manifesto because they've never had a chance of being elected. And now they're finally getting scrutiny. They're getting exposed for, frankly, a load of nonsense.
I don't know how I can respond to all that. But yeah, look, I think that what we've currently have happened in this country, which is austerity and the depression of wages, has not benefited the economy. We keep talking about growth, that growth model. And the IMF came out and said this 2 years ago. We had the lowest growth of the G20, lower than Russia. And so the program of the Tories and Labour of cutting benefits, cutting the state, cutting increases in wages, not boosting wages, that's not actually good. It doesn't entice capitalists to come here and invest. It actually depresses wages and depresses demand. Policies like increasing the minimum wage, and we see this in studies like the famous Carden-Kruger study in 1996 from the US that said you increase the minimum wage, you see more circulation of capital at the lowest rung, and you actually see the boosting of the economy and more employment,
Only
not
if
less
people
employment,
get employed.
which is counterintuitive. So I can't address every single point that you're making, but all I can say is that poll after poll shows that under 65-year-olds in this country, the Greens are winning.
They are doing well. Unfortunately, they're also the group of people, particularly young people, who don't actually bother turning out to vote. We shall see what happens. I'd love to talk to you again next week when we know the full results of...
What stood out to me most in this interview wasn't even the back and forth over Zack Polanski. It was the bigger question of standards and consistency in politics. Because if we're being honest, every major party in Britain has had candidates, activists, or officials who have said outrageous things online. The real question is whether party leadership deals with it properly. When it's exposed, that's the standard that should apply to everyone, whether it's Labour, Reform, the Conservatives, or the Greens. On the anti-Semitism issue, political parties have to be extremely careful. Criticism of a government, including the Israeli government, is legitimate political speech. But once people start trafficking in anti-Semitic tropes, conspiracy theories, or celebrating violence against Jewish people, that's a completely different matter. Any party serious about governing has a responsibility to draw that line clearly. What I also found interesting was Kumar's challenge about media narratives. Whether you agree with him or not, he was essentially arguing that public discussions are often shaped by selective emphasis. That's a debate worth having because trust in institutions and media remains incredibly fragile right now. Then we get to the economics. This is where the real ideological divide appears. Julia's argument is that green policies are economically unrealistic and would damage growth. Kumar's argument is that the current model has already failed, producing weak growth, stagnant wages, and widespread frustration. That's the debate voters are increasingly having across Western democracies. And here's the reality. Voters are looking for alternatives because many feel the status quo isn't delivering. The challenge for parties like the Greens is proving that their ideas are not just attractive slogans, but workable policies that can survive real-world scrutiny. That's why interviews like this matter, not because of the political theater, but because they force parties seeking power to explain how their ideas would actually work in practice. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure to like and subscribe to Backbench Briefing, and let me know in the comments, do you think the Green Party is being unfairly targeted by the media? Or do you think it's finally receiving the scrutiny that comes with becoming a serious political force? I'll see you in the next one.